All right, we're back. We are GAME 2015 in the winter 2018 semester. That's virtual reality development. And we are week 9, part 1 of our broadcast. We're going to talk about intro to texture painting with Blender, and then we're going to go and do some Unity stuff, right? So this is the first part, so I'm going to use Blender for this one. So again, I'm using Blender 2.79. I've got my little cube. And what I want to do with this one today is I want to build some interior stuff, some tiles and that kind of thing, right? And I want to create my, kind of a tile, but different than what we did before. Last time we actually built tiles from a plane and then we built up. And what I want to do this time is almost create like a tunnel. I want to start by creating a tunnel, and I'm going to do that. There's a couple ways we can do that. One way is to hollow out a cube and then invert the normals. So actually like point the normals inside, right? And then paint the inside of the cube, and you're walking through corridors, that's just the cube, right? So how do we do that? Well, we start off with the cube. Right now, I'm gonna change my units like we normally do. So let's go from a unit presets perspective. We'll go to meters, okay, as an example. And notice that we're about 2 meters. So it's kind of a smaller hallway round. 2 meters by 2 meters is like 6 feet. So we need at least like double this, maybe like 5 or 10 meters wide. So let's just move the dimensions to like 10 meters by 10 meters and see how that looks. So if it's like 10 meters by 10 meters is like really big, it's massive, right? So that would be like a massive room, right? 10 meters by 10 meters, like, or well, not massive, not too massive a room, but massive height. So this may not be realistic. We can bring this down a little bit. Now, if you figure like an average story is about 15 feet, 15 to 20 feet, an average story. And we're with a ceiling height, let's say of around 10 feet would be a good ceiling height. Normally, we don't even get that much height, right? 10 feet. So if you want to convert that from feet to meters, we can do that. We can go into just a tool, and I want to say something like, feet to meters. And I'm going to put in something like, I don't know, 15 feet is roughly 4.5 meters, let's say. And if it was 10 feet, the ceiling height would be like 3 meters. So that would be a more realistic ceiling height in a house. Now, if it's a tunnel, it might be much bigger than that. We can go back to the 15 meters or 20 meters thing. 15 or 20 feet, let's say, right? So let's just say 15 feet for us. We'll say, roughly 5 meters is what we're going to make our tunnel height. So again, going back to this is too high. Let's go back to 5 meters by 5 meters, and that's going to be our tunnel height and our tunnel width. Make it square. Great. So we've got our tunnel. Well, we don't need all the sides of this because right now it's just a cube. So we're going to go into edit mode, and we're going to get rid of this side here. So I'm going to control tab into face select mode. Select that and delete the face. So no face on this side, and going back to this side, delete this face. Great. And we've got the the faces of our cube. Now, if we were to proceed like this, right now the normals is where all the textures are going to be drawn, and they're facing outward. Okay, the normals are all outside. And so what we can do is we can kind of select the entire cube and then go to mesh, normals, flip normals. And what this does is it actually points the normals inside. Okay. Just to give you an idea of what this will look like, we can use back face culling, so that way you don't see the face that's not being drawn. Okay, back face culling is a technique that's used in CG, computer graphics. So only the face that's being drawn is rendered, but the other face on the other side is not being rendered, because you don't need to render a side that's not going to be seen by the camera. All right, so we turn that on. I'm also changing my shading type from multi-texture to GLSL to comply with what we've been doing in OpenGL. And now I have this corridor that we can plainly see is just a cube, okay? Sometimes though, what we want to do is we want to separate some of this stuff off, right? Like the ceiling, this face here, or different parts of our cube, so we can do some of our texturing and a little bit of modeling as well, okay? So here's something we want to do. We can hide different faces, right? So I can choose this face here and press the H key to hide it. And I can also hide this face, right? So I can hide this face. So now I have this kind of thing. It's still a cube, the vertices are there, but they're physically hidden. What I want to do, if I go back into object mode, you can see that in object mode it's back, right? And what I want to do is move the cube so it is at the level of the floor. And if I do it manually, you can see that I get to about, 2.5, because my cube is 5 feet by 5 meters by 5 meters, 2.5 meters. Actually, I don't know how I did it perfectly, but it's like, that's where sorry, it's not. It's 2.5 meters up on the Z-axis. There it is. That's perfect now. Okay, cool. The other thing we want to do is, because we're going to use this as a tile, and a different tile than we did before. I know that some of you have made a tile. I want to be able to snap this tile to the next one, right? So I can't snap it like this, because guess what? The cursor, or sorry, the pivot point is in the middle of this cube, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever, right? So I want to take this three-dimensional object, and I want to be able to snap it to one corner, right? So to do that, I want to move my my object, right, as close to the middle of my origin as possible. My origin's at 0, 0, right? And I got half my object this way and half my object over there, right? I got to put it at the origin. Now, there's a couple of techniques we can use here. Depending on how you want to snap your objects or how you want to rotate them, you rotate them usually from one corner, right? So what I want to do is I want to move it over across the x-axis 2.5 meters. So I'm going to go do that now. So on the x-axis, move it over 2.5 meters. There we go. And I want to move it over on the y-axis, also 2.5 meters. So it kind of positions ahead of me. Did I do too much? I did 25 meters. Yay. There we go. So now it kind of puts my cube with one corner at the center. See that? Corners at the center. Now what I can do is I can change my origin, right? So that the origin is not in the middle of my cube, but rather at the corner of this side, right? So to do that, I'm going to go over here where it says set origin. I'm going to change set origin to 3D cursor. And what this does is it actually allows me to pivot my cube right from the corner. So if I rotate it across the x-axis, you can see now that it rotates only across where the origin point is, right? Or I can rotate it across the z-axis. I can rotate it across this way, which allows me to translate my tile a little better. This is what this thing is going to be eventually. Okay, going back into edit mode though, I have these two faces, right? And I want to start thinking about how I'm going to texture them, right? Now, what I could do is I could definitely add a little bit of geometry here. But in this particular instance, I don't want to do that. I want to make the geometry as simple as possible. Simple as possible here, right? So if I modify anything, I want to cut this cube up a little bit, but not too much, because the more I cut it up, the more areas that I'm going to have to take care of, right? So again, I'm going to go to select all. I'm going to go to change my, I'm going to go my subdivide there, subdivide. Now I've subdivided it once. This is a one subdivision. Let's subdivide it one more time. So make 2 cuts, right? So there's quite a few areas that I can modify now, right? And that's good. And let's say I want to make the tunnel so it's a little bit more angular as opposed to straight like this. So I want to kind of bring these faces a little bit. I want to extrude them in a little bit, just to give it a little bit of extra texture in there, right? Or an idea of volume, if you will. Now I could use a normal map and draw it with a texture, but I can also bring this in a little bit just to make it a little bit more interesting than what it is. Almost like a space age tunnel or some kind of spaceship. All right, so to do that, I'm going to right click and select these faces. I'm going to press the E for extrude and then enter, right? And then I'm going to drag this part in, just like we did before, to create that extra geometry. Now this geometry is inside my tunnel, so to create almost like an area that I'm going to snap. The back is not being rendered because the face is being culled, all right? So CULL. And I'm not going to need this face because it's going to cause Z fighting. This face right here, I'm not going to need this one because this one's going to snap to the other hall, right? So I'm going to get rid of this one, so just delete it. And I'm going to get rid of this one as well. Delete that face, but I need the rest of them. So it's going to look like this so far. I'm making my tile, all right? There's that left part, and I've extruded in a little bit. And let's say, for example, I only have it on one side. If I unhide everything, if I press Alt-H, so I can bring back the rest of the geometry, you can see that the left side of my cube is now got this little indent, right? But the right side of my cube is straight. Okay? What I could do now is I could create a cut in the middle, right, like I've done before, and then I can mirror across the other side to make it geometrically symmetrical, right? So the way to do that, again, would be to make Control R. So I'm cutting across the middle and pressing Enter, right? And then I'm going to go into front view. This is my front view inside of my orthographic mode by pressing the 5 key on the number pad. I'm going to use my B key, and I'm going to select only the right side of my object, right? Now notice it only selects this part, but not this ceiling or the roof, because I forgot that part. Let me just undo that and make a cut on the roof as well. So I'm going to go Control R, right? So I want to kind of go into, let's go back in there. Again, it's a little tricky to see in this perspective. Let's just go back to here. So I want to kind of put a cut on the ceiling as well. So Control R. Here you can see that I can go here, but here I'm having a bit of challenge to do, right? In fact, one of the things I noticed immediately is that this wall here isn't cut at all, right? So I want to select this area and Control R, and you can see that it's not cutting, right? It's only making like the cut along the edges of my cube that I can see, right? Even if I do it this way, Control R doesn't seem to work because I've modified everything to such a degree, right? See? Pressing Control R, it's not really working. So I could use the cut tool for this, or if I really want to, I can just get rid of the top and this side and mirror it from this part here. And that's really weird that it's not working. And I'm probably sure it didn't work because the way I cut this cube up, these were hidden faces. I bet you if I do the same thing on this side, it also won't work. So Control R from this side. Yeah, it's not working at all. Isn't that interesting? So a couple of options. We could delete this face and put it back. So let's try that. So I can say, okay, face, let's go into face select mode. Select this face and delete it. And also delete this one. And then what I could do is I could mirror what I have, right, on the right, and then I can connect the top. So what I want to do is something like this. So again, bringing it back into front mode, I can delete some of the part on the right. So deselect all, deselect, and get the middle part, which is about right here, right? Because it looks like there's like one cut, two cuts, and then there's nothing. So again, just to show you what I'm talking about is I've got this middle part right here, this middle vertex right here, and I want to cut from this point on because this is too long. So again, so I'm going to go one of these and cut these parts out, and then just and I got to go into vertex select mode. That would be really good. Try it again, and just get rid of the vertices or the the faces. Let's try that again. I'm really having a lovely time today. I really want to just get rid of this part. So I'll select it and get rid of it this way. There we go. Delete. There we go. So that's what I wanted. So I've got half a face, and I got this wall over here. And what I can do is I can mirror, like I've done before. Let's just hide the camera for now and the lamp, because I don't care about those things, just to keep it clean. And what I want to do is I want to select all. So there's my shape for what looks like part of my wall. And I'm going to go to this little funky tool here, and I'm going to click on Mirror. Now, what happens is it mirrors it the wrong way, because that's what I've asked it to do. So it's mirroring this way. But I want to really flip it on the other side as well. So instead of flipping that way, if I undo this one and do, it mirrors it across whatever axis you want, right? So An example of this is if I choose the y-axis, right, it'll mirror it this way. If I choose the z-axis, it'll mirror it that way across the z-axis, right? And also what I can think about doing is I can flip this axis altogether or move it towards the left, right, and readjust my center. So again, what I can do is I can move this whole object across the x-axis 2.5 meters. Let's try that again. Across the x-axis, negative 2.5 meters. So there's that. And I can reset my origin. Let's try this. So again, going back to object mode, I can set my origin to my three-dimensional cursor. There it is. And then when I do that, when I go back and mirror it again, so I can go back into mirror modifier across the x-axis, I have that other point now. So there you have an exact copy of what I've done on the left is being done on the right. Okay? And then I can connect my, my top face all together if I want to by just connecting the points, right? So again, what I want to do is in object mode, so this is in just in edit mode. I'm not going to do anything else, just this part, right? Just so that we can save time. In object mode, what I can do is I can apply the mirror and go into edit mode. Now I have the geometry that I want, and then connect the geometry and create these faces. And the way to do that easily is go into vertex select mode, select the vertices that I want. So these are the 4 vertices, and then press F to create the face. And same thing with these vertices. And then press F to create the face, and then the last set of vertices. And then I can press F to create that face. So you see I have those vertices up there. So there's the top face. And I have these vertices here. And I really don't need all these divisions down here. So I'm just going to delete these faces here down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into face select mode here. And I want to dissolve some of these faces. Like these 2 faces here can be dissolved. So I'm going to say X and then dissolve faces. And the same thing goes with these ones for now. So I'm going to press X and dissolve faces. And then what I really want, actually, let me undo that change. I want it to do this way. So here, we'll just do this one, X dissolve faces, and then X dissolve faces. So I don't need all this geometry, right? And now what I have is this kind of area that I've created, almost like a tile, that's part of a hallway, all right? So this is making tiles, and now what I want to do is I want to move this back so that it is centered on the left-hand side, right? So again, I could do the same thing, but remember that eventually what I want to do is I want to make it tileable. So that's why I want to make almost like a T-junction right now, because I've got like this straight tile. I want to make a T-junction that allows me to do stuff, and also some kind of cross. So a cross, a T-junction, and a straight. And that should do most of the things I need. Also the angles, the corners, because we haven't done the corners either. So I need to make quite a few tiles here. All right, so again, I've got this part, and one thing I can do with Blender is I can save this whole thing into another layer. Blender has, by default, quite a few layers that are available to it, right? So I can move this into another layer. If I go back to the object mode, you can see that I've got my object, and I've got these layers down here, right? So I can just basically move this to another layer. If I press the M key, I can move it to whatever layer I want. Let's move it to this other layer. I can also copy this to another layer, right? So if I say, duplicate, D for duplicate, and then press Enter, right? You can see that I have, undo that change. So Shift D for duplicate and press Enter. I'll be okay today. I've got this other copy, right? This other copy, right? But I don't want to copy it here. I want to move this into its own layer, right? So I want to move this into another layer altogether, right? There we go. So now I have only one copy. I've got this part here, and in the other layer I have this one, which is actually this is my straight. So I can, with this one selected, I can go into my outliner and just put in straight. There's my straight tile. If I can spell straight today. There we go. And now if I go back into my original layer, here's my original layer here. This one is the cube that I'm using to make other tiles. So what I want to do now is I want to make a kind of an angle, a curve, right? So it's going to kind of go this way and then turn to go this way, right? So a couple ways to do that. One thing is I'm going to move it to the right for now. So I'm going to kind of go, move it across the x-axis 2.5 meters, right? And then I'm going to readjust the origin. So I'm going to set origin again to 3-dimensional cursor. There it is. So now you can see again, I can rotate this all across this area, which is really useful for me. And what I want to do is I want to duplicate this tile. So Shift D, enter. I know this is 5 meters. I want to move it across the y-axis, right? 5 meters, right? So there it is. There's it duplicated and moved over. And it's perfectly snapped to the other tile, right? Now the thing is, it's going to be a right turn or a left turn, let's say, as an example. I'm going to start with those ones. So my right turn is going to go this way. So what I want to do is I want to open up this one and close this part. That's what I want to do, and kind of create an area where I turn to the right. So a couple ways to do this, right? First of all, I could duplicate my tile and rotate it. So let's say Shift D for duplicate, and then I want to rotate it across the y-axis, right? Or sorry, the z-axis. If I go 90, it goes this way. I don't want it to go that way. Rotate across the z-axis, -90, right? That's what I want it to do. And I want to move this, so press G across the x-axis, 5 meters, and then G across the y-axis, 5 meters. And so I have my geometry, kind of, except I have this wall that I have to get rid of. So again, I'm going to go into, select this one, this tile here. I'm going to go into edit mode. I'm going to get rid of this wall. So just get rid of this one. And make sure I get these tiles here because this is part of it. And again, there's other ways to do this. You can break this down even more fine detail. So I want to get rid of these faces. They're gone. All right, so this is part of it. But I need this wall, and this wall here needs a copy, right, of this. I need a copy of this that spans this way and connects in the middle somehow, right? So that's going to be a little bit challenging to do because I don't have that geometry, right? I only have this geometry, and I want this part open. So there's a couple things to do. What I could do is I already have this in the right orientation, right? But it's in another tile. It's something that's totally different than this one, right? So I could join all these tiles together and then duplicate this and connect it, which might be the easiest way to do it. So I've already got the junction. I just need to add some geometry, which is what I'm going to do. So to join, I want to go back into object mode and select the first tile, then click the second and the last tile, and I'm going to press, I believe, Control J to join them all together. So now there's one cube, and if I press Tab now, I have access to all that geometry inside of edit mode. I got a problem with this roof I've got to fix because it can't do exactly what it's doing right here. This part of the roof is going to be slightly different because it's joining with this roof, and I need to be able to join that up. So going into this, some of the easiest ways to do this again would be to select this part, these tiles here, right, this tile and this tile, but I got to do it kind of a little bit tricky. So I want to kind of get these tiles here. And I want to duplicate these ones just like we did before. So again, I want to Shift D and then duplicate just that geometry and move it across the x-axis 5 meters, but to the other way. So, kind of move across the x-axis -5 meters. There we go. There's that tile nicely put in place there, right? So you can see how that connects. Now there's a problem on the corner because the corner doesn't need all that geometry. There's colliding geometry. We got to fix that corner just for this junction. And there's a problem along these corners because this corner here, right? This corner here is empty, and that's a problem. We don't want this corner to be empty. So we have to extend these ones, right? connect these ones. Now there's a couple ways to connect them. We can make it dirty and connect them just across this way, which is totally fine, right? If that's the style you want. And I think just for time, that's what we're going to do. So again, I'm going to go back into vertex select mode and then just join these by creating a face. So join these three things and just press F for face. And then same thing with these ones. So create these three things here. Just select all those and press F for face. And then now that I have that, I can select all those and click F for face again. And I got that kind of geometry going. It's not pretty. I mean, it'd be nice if it was kind of a different kind of joiner there, but that's not bad either. Where my difficulty is going to be is actually inside of here. Because I've got this, this area here that seems to be intersecting, okay? So these faces here. Now, one of the things I can do is I can accept one face, right? I can select one face, so Control Tab for going to face select mode. And then all I need is these two vertices here. So that's the face, then Control Tab into vertex select mode, just to select the vertices that I need. So I want to select this one and this one. Now, hopefully I've got the right ones. As you can see, if I did this, this vertex here is connected to these ones, right? So then I would deform this face, which is not kind of something that I want. I just want to move this face here by itself. So there's a couple things I can do. I can disconnect this face. So basically delete it. So let's undo that. So Control Tab, face select mode. Then if I press X and I delete the face, I have one part of my problem fixed because I've kind of deleted that one area, right? But I have this area here that has to move back or be deleted by itself. Now, there's a couple ways to do this. One is I can create a cut to do that over here, so I can cut it. So I've got this piece here that goes right through. It just barrels right through here. So I could delete this part here as well, right? But something's got to give over here in terms of this particular tile, one thing or the other. So I got to do the same thing with this one. So X to delete that one. That face goes through. And I got to X to delete this one. That face goes through, right? So I've got this part right here, and I really want to extend this one and pull this one back. These ones here have to be pulled back, these vertices, right? And these vertices here as well. But these vertices, this one here, this edge needs to be stay the same, right? So a couple things I could do. I could make a cut over here to do that and connect it somehow. Because right now there's no connection. Like if I actually select this vertex or this face and pull it over, you can see that there's no connection between this face and this face, which is a good thing actually right now, okay? But what I want to do is pull this part back, just this part. So I could delete it, and again, extend it. This face, delete this face. This is one way of doing it, and delete this face here. So now I've got this hole. And what I want to do is extend this part, this edge, so that it moves over here. Now I can extrude that. So again, I can Control Tab the edges, get this edge, and then extrude, right? Again, along the y-axis, if I'm not wrong, as far as I want, let's say approximately right there. It's not going to be perfect. And again, I'm going to do the same thing with this one. So I can extrude across the x-axis. So that we're going to do one of these, right? It's going to be close, but it's not going to be perfect. We're going to adjust it in a second. Okay. And the same thing goes with the bottom edges. So I can kind of select this face here and extrude across the y-axis, right? So it kind of goes to approximate where it's going to join. I'm just estimating with my eye right now. And again, extrude across the x-axis, so approximately where it's supposed to be. So it's going to be perfect, but we're going to make this joining area. And I got to decide what's going to happen in there. And then this part is going to be easy. Once I've fixed these areas, then that area was going to be totally fixed, right? Because I've created this area. In fact, I might as well do it now. So the way to do this, because they're not connected right now, is I can select Control Tab and select my vertices. Select this vertex and let's say this vertex. Make sure I selected the two vertices that are not disconnected, like that one and this one. I really zoom in here to see them. So if I select the wrong vertex, then that's bad. There we go. And this vertex. And if I press the rest of them, which is this one, I only have to do this one time. It's a little tedious, but what it is, there's that face. And then if I want to, I can select those edges now from that face. So Control Tab, go into Edge Select mode, select this edge and this edge. So that edge, that's why I'm having trouble selecting it. So if I do one of these, right, you can see that those other edges are left behind. I don't want that. I want these edges here, this one and this one. Selected all those three edges. Now they're not perfect, but I can move them back because they're not connected. All right, so that's this part disconnected. And then I do the same thing with this one. So I'm going to say this edge, and this edge. And I want to make a face from that. So there's my face from that one. And I want to move these edges as close to this one as possible, right? So I get this edge. Control Tab and go edges, this one. And this one. So I get to look at the edges to do it. And the bottom edge. And start moving it closer until they're pretty close. What I want to do is get these things to join, right? So I want to kind of move this one over here, but these ones are kind of misaligned. So just maybe align them a little bit closer. And you can see that there's quite a bit of a shift here. But that's totally fine because I can move this one closer. And what I want to do is join these little vertices. And I want to join this one to this one. So again, going back to vertex select mode, do this vertex and this vertex. And then on the left, there's merge at last. So those are merged. I want to do the last ones here too. So I want to say that this vertex and this vertex are together. So merge at last. There we go. Now that's perfectly aligned, right? And now I can create my bottom face, which I have to do. And I'm going to have some issues with this thing. We're going to talk about this in a second. But these four vertices, I'm going to have to merge. So make a face out of. And these four vertices, again, if I can get to that vertex, I'm going to have to merge. Yeah. Vertex. So this one, and this one, and this one, and this one, and make a face out of that one too. Also, we still know that there's a bunch of vertices here and everywhere else that have been merged, but they're not really connected. So what I can do is I can select all for everything and then go remove doubles, which will allow me to disconnect or get rid of double vertices, which actually just merges the ones that are together as it is. All right, so that's that's the corner piece. Now that is half the battle right there because I can mirror the other side, right? So this could be a right or left turn, doesn't matter which side you want to use, right? If I use this side, it's the left turn. If I use this side, it's the right turn. But we need to make it work. So remember that this would be the right turn right now. There's a bit of problems with the ceiling, or what do you think the problems with the ceiling would be here? Mac or anybody else on that side? James, what do you think the problem with the ceiling is over here? You can actually see it. There's this part here where this is broken up into 3 tiles, and this tile is going this way, and this one is going this way. And what I need is to create a pattern of tiles that go up here. Otherwise, what's going to happen is there's these lost, remember I talked about these lost vertices. It's going to be looking weird when you actually render them. they don't know what to do. Like there's this is kind of a dead vertex. There's nothing that it connects to. There's no geometry here. So it doesn't know what to do. You literally have to draw lines this way, right, to make that connect, right? So just to bring this back to make it look easier so you can see it, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring back the back faces so you can see what they look like. Just for now. I took back face calling, I put back face calling on so you can't see the faces that are being called. So I need a line here and a line there, and I want it exactly perfectly. So the way to do that is, again, what I can do is I press Control R, and what you can do is notice on the left there's a number of cuts. I can make it so that there is 2 cuts, which is roughly the exact way I want it. So for this area here, it's going to be a little bit more complex than this area because this area here is straight, but this area here requires additional cuts. So press Enter for this to accept the changes, right? I need the same thing on the floor. So the floor needs the same problem. So I need to go kind of Control R for the floor vertices. So let's just do that. So Control or A to deselect all, Control R to kind of create that line. And again, I'm having the same problem that I had before with these cuts here. I can do these parts, but I can't do the floor. And there's a reason for this because the floor's already been cut up already. You see that there's these extra verts on the bottom of the floor that I didn't get rid of. So I don't know if you guys can see these verts, but this one, and this one, these were for the original cuts that I made that I took off. Maybe a little bit too quick. I probably should have left them in. These ones, there's these little verts, and what I can do is I can press X and I can dissolve vertices, which make kind of tells Blender what to do a little bit more. So I guess delete this vertex as well. And there's also these extra vertices over here, which I'm going to delete in a second. So again, what I want to do is Control R, and I can see now that I get the line from these two, right? But not over here. And the reason why I don't get the line is because I've got some funky geometry, and Blender does not know what to do with me. But this is good. This is a good start. So I'm going to put that in there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what I did last time, make 2 cuts. There we go. Oh, not 2, 3, 2. There's my 2 cuts, and then press, kind of join these 2 lines. So I'm going to kind of cut between these 2. I'm going to say use my K tool and cut. Again, this was something that I could have done differently. K tool here and cut across to create the geometry that I need, so that way it's not messed up here. And again, I've reduced my geometry a lot. I don't need to do much more than this right now. I'm going to use these as tile squares, so I'm going to just get rid of some of these verts that I don't need, that are causing me to have additional geometry that is going to be rendered and yet no effect. So I'm just going to get rid of this. So X to dissolve vertices. And the same thing goes here, where I want to get rid of these verts. So X to delete those vertices. Okay, and you can see that I've got some pretty good geometry now for my corner. All right, questions for this corner so far. So this is another piece, right? Notice it's on the corner here like this. And this is a great place to copy it. So I'm going to kind of select all, right? And then I'm going to go into object mode. I'm going to press M for move and move it into another layer, right? I'm going to go get my other one back. So go back into this layer. So let's go back into this layer, undo that change, undo, move it into the 3rd layer, right? And then go back into the 2nd layer that I got this one from, select all, Shift D, and move this one back into the 1st layer. So move into the 1st layer, and then go back to the 1st layer. I have this one back. I'm going to move it, I'm going to press G, move this across the x-axis, 2.5 meters, so that it is its origin. I want to set the origin again. So so what I want to do is how I have this one, right? So again, you see I have one object here and I have another one here. I've left that one there. This is just different layers. So this one is my object. And I want to set origin to 3-dimensional cursor. This is my little tile, right? So I've done, this one, which is kind of like a straight. I've done this one, which is a right turn, and I'm gonna do the left turn now. All I'm gonna do is mirror this one. So it goes, instead of this way, it's gonna go this way. Okay, so how do I do that? It's like I wanna scale it, but I wanna scale it only across the y-axis. That's what I wanna do here. Okay, so first let's copy it. So I'm gonna just select it. I wanna Shift D, copy it. I wanna move it into another layer. So let's move it into this layer. Go there into that layer. So this is the right turn. And we're going to call this left turn. Left turn. Going back into the other layer for a second, we can call this, just to name it, right turn. They're almost exactly the same. Left turn, right turn. But the left turn has got to go the other way, and it has to follow the same pattern. Now, I could have just taken this part and flipped it over here, but I really want to show you this way of scaling. So I want to scale across the y-axis, right? So this is the y-axis, and that's actually wrong. I want to scale across the x-axis. That's what I want to do. So this way, right? But I want to scale across the x-axis a -1, right? Which does one of these. So that kind of flips it this way. Now the origin is still here, so I want to move this across here about 5 meters. So again, I want to move it across the x-axis, -5. Then I want to set origin to 3-dimensional cursor, and there's my left turn. It's exactly like the right turn, except it starts here and goes left instead of here and go right. Okay. Left turn, right turn. Again, you might have different uses for these. What I want to do now is I want to make a T-junction, right? A T-junction, which is literally like combining left turn with right turn. I've got half of it. I want to do the other half. So in order for me to do this, right, the easiest way is to mirror by cutting this in half and mirroring it on the other side. Okay, so in order for us to do this, we're going to move it to the left. Right, so first we're going to copy it, and let's go back to the original. Let's get rid of this for a second. And I want to go back into the original, this one here, take this one, Shift D to duplicate it, and then I want to move it back into the original layer. There's back into the original layer. Then I want to move it across this way 2.5 meters. So again, move across the x-axis -2.5 meters. There it is, right? And I want to cut this geometry away. That's what I want to do. I want to cut this geometry away and then mirror it. Okay, so cutting away is the tough part, right? Because what we need to do is we need to create a cut somehow. So again, Control R, I'm going to tab into edit mode, Control R. You can see that I got some of it. I can get right in there. But then let's just put the culling back on for a second so I don't have to see that part, right? So I can put back face culling on just for a second. And you can see that it's kind of hard to see, but I want to kind of make a cut that goes from here to here. I do have an extra vertex that I left in place. So again, I'm going to delete, kind of deselect all. I want to go into vertex select mode and select this vertex and this one. And then actually what I want to do is make a cut from those two. Let's try doing a cut instead. Making a line is not going to help me, just do a cut. And maybe what I need to do is get rid of this face altogether because I have this extra geometry here, which is going to cause me a lot of pain. So maybe just like redo that. So undo that change, undo that change. Let's not make that cut. And let's go back and do Control R, make that cut again, enter. But this time make 2 cuts, which actually might be a little better for me. Right, and the reason why is because then I can get rid of this plane. So Control A or A to select this face, get rid of it. Face, and then what I want to do is make my faces on my own. So I want to go Control A into vertex select mode, select all these ones. Okay. Let's do these ones first here. Case here, and then I want to get rid of half of this one in a second, but first let's make it so it's perfect. Or this. These guys are nonstop with the Discord today. All right, so kind of do one of these and then press it. Okay, cool. So now that I've got those faces, I should be able to do a Control R all the way down, and I do. R, press Enter. It creates that cut. Now, it doesn't cut the top, but it did cut this part. And I want to cut the top too. So again, what I want to do is go in here, and if I go to these faces, and if I press Control R, and press that as Enter, and I do want to make those extra cuts, so let us move into 2 cuts, just so we match these ones, because we're going to have problems if we don't. Press Enter, and then Control R again for the middle phase, and kind of enter there. So now I have enough information so I can mirror. What I need to do is cut half of my geometry away. So I'm going to kind of get out of here and deselect all. I want to select half of my geometry on this side, which saw this, and then X to delete faces, which basically cuts it right across the side. So I've got half of my T-junction. Show you what I got. It looks like this, right? Then I can add a modifier. So I can add a mirror modifier, and I can mirror across the Y-axis or the X-axis, whatever, depending on what I want. And if it's not working out, let's say, for example, you know what? It's not exactly right, because what it's trying to do, if I mirror across the X-axis, it's doing one of these. It's kind of a funky, weird, double T. So that's a weird junction. We can kind of use that as well. I won't do it right now. That's not exactly what I was looking for. I was looking for mirroring across the Y-axis. But if we mirror across the Y-axis, you see that it's kind of intersecting. And the reason for this is because of the way that I'm mirroring. So in order for me to make the intersection work, I'm going to select all. And if I move this to this side, you can see that it mirrors the other way. But what I want to do is kind of move it out kind of to there, right? So kind of move it out. So it was originally here, and I want to move it out. Let's undo. It was originally here, and I want to kind of move it this way another 2.5 meters. So let's just undo that. So I kind of move across the X-axis a negative 2.5 meters, and I've got my T-junction, my friends. That's what it looks like. Right? All right, now that I've got it, I'm going to apply it. So I'm going to tab into object mode. I'm going to apply my modifier. Here's my T-junction. It's hard for you to see because it's being culled. Only the inside is being drawn, right? But what I want to do is I want to move this across the X-axis 5 meters and then set the origin again. So move across the X-axis 5 meters and set my origin to my 3-dimensional cursor, and there's my T-junction. Okay. What this looks like inside, just to give you a sense of what that looks like, is something like this. So you go into the corridor and you can turn right and left. Okay, so again, somewhat what we've talked about before with tiles, but this is way more accurate. It causes there's an internal scene that we're creating, right? So that it helps us do kind of our stuff. We almost have everything we need. So I'm going to duplicate this. So I'm going to Shift D, right? Duplicate it. And then I'm going to move it into another layer. So I'm going to kind of move into another layer that's not occupied over here. Now I'm going to call this one T-junction. So kind of go to here, go to this, and turn this, and call this T-junction. Right turn, left turn, T-junction. And I like the H. The H is kind of cool because it gives you kind of a double T. But the one I really need is the cross. I want the one that has kind of a junction in the middle where there's a cross. So there's actually the H and the cross, and then I'm done. The H is easy to do. I just have to mirror across the X-axis. So again, I'm going to put my mirror modifier. And across the X-axis, this is the H. So this is a double kind of junction that goes like this, where it connects in the middle. That's not a bad, kind of an H junction, if you will, or whatever. It's like a T, but it's like it's reversed, right? So again, I'm just going to apply the modifier, and then I'm going to Shift D for duplicate, enter, and then I'm going to move into another layer, like over here. Press that enter. That's good. And back into this one. Right, here's this one right here. This is the original one, right? So this is original, then I got this one, 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 right? Then I also have this one, right? What happened to I went from here, so undo this one. So undo the changes. Yeah, that's not what I wanted. So undo. Copy it. Yeah, so I got to cut. I went too far. I got to cut this in half again. Sorry. Oh well. That's what happened when you get so excited. My T junction is an H. So let's go back to this part. This is the H junction. So let's change that to an H junction. My T junction, which is still there, is in another layer. It's in this layer here. And what I want to do is cut it in half. So I'm going to edit mode, and I want to go from the right side this time, and I want to cut this part off. It's actually easier to delete than anything else, but we want to just cut these faces off completely. Complete faces. There we have it. All right, cool. So we've got our T. Right, this is our T junction, and you can see that that's still there. And let's we have our we have the other ones. Let's go back in so we can see that that's working. So there's the T, left turn, there's right turn, there's our straight. Straight's not really that right; it should be on the corner here. So I kind of select this one, and I want to press G and move it to the right across the x-axis, 2.5 meters. And then I want to set the origin to 3D cursor. That's the one. That's the straight one. Now I've done a lot. I want to save this stuff. So I want to save as, and I'm going to put it on my desktop, my messy desktop, as I was told today. You got a messy desktop. And I'm going to call this tile set .blend, my tile set, and then save as Blender file. All right. The only thing I'm missing is a cross, right? So how do I make the cross? Well, I can use this one, right, my T, and I can bring this down, cut half of the geometry and mirror it. So again, let's try this out. So select this one. And then what I want to do is I want to make this come down about, I would say, it's got to come down to about there. So I need a cut in the middle. I don't have that right now. Let's add that cut. First, let's move it. So I'll say move down across the y-axis. Let's say 5 meters. Oops, down across the y-axis, -5 meters. And then what I want is for this part to extend this way and duplicate. So let's see how we're going to do this here. So I'm going to edit mode, look at it from the right side. I want to press Control R here, which makes a cut in the middle. I want to do the same thing on the roof. R, and it does, of course, doesn't cut everything. Because, I'm a lucky guy. The way I've done this thing is somewhat flawed, but that's okay. Cool, and let's go in there and take a look at the problem, how bad it is. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad because I can't get this cut here. See about, can I get cuts there? Oh, somehow I can now. That's fine. I'll accept that. I will accept that cut. No problem. All right, cool. So I've got these cuts. They're not directly aligned, but I want to get rid of half of my geometry again. So I'm looking at it from the right side down the line, right? And it's tricky, right? I want to get rid of from here. It's going to be hard to see this, but kind of go into wireframe mode, deselect all. I want to select this part here and get rid of it. So I'm kind of just get rid of this part here, and then just get rid of faces. And then I got this T-junction that I'm going to mirror now. Okay, now I need to move this back another 2.5 meters, let's say. So I'm going to select all and then move across the y-axis a negative 2.5 meters, which moves it kind of in place. Yes, it is moved in place, which is right there. There we go. And now what I want to do is I'm going to mirror across the x-axis. I'm going to say here, make the mirror. I'm going to go across the x-axis. But why isn't this working right? It's not working because I've got it in the wrong position. I want to really have it even further down, like just about here. So let's do that. Undo. Move this, I would say 5 meters on the y. So move across the y-axis like 5 meters. No. Move across the y-axis negative 5 meters. And there we have it. There's my T. Okay, cool. Let's take a look and see what that looks like when I take it out of. Yes, it looks good. We're good. All right, so we see we have everything. It's just not created. It's not aligned properly. Remember what I said. You have to kind of align everything so that it starts somewhere down here. So I want to take this whole thing, going back into this mode, apply my mirror. I want to kind of get this whole thing here, and I want to move across the y-axis 5 meters, move across the y-axis 5 more meters, and then move across the y-axis 2.5 meters. So it's exactly there. This is where my origin is going to be, and I'm going to say set origin to 3-dimensional cursor. There we go. And that, my friends, is the T-junction. Did I make a mistake? I think I did. Mirror. Yeah, that's the T-junction, of course, and I copied that part, but luckily I have a copy over here, which is not the T-junction, it's actually the H, which is easy to cut in half. So I'll do that again, one more time. So this is my cross. This is the cross section or intersection. So let's just rename this. So we'll name this intersection instead of T-junction. There we go. Let's make sure all the other ones are okay. Left turn is here. That's correct. And this is right turn. So this is straight. That's straight. That's right turn. Right? That is left turn. That is the intersection. Right? What's in here? Oh, there's my T-junction. Yay, I did copy it. I just didn't use it. T-junction. T-junction. Thank God, that saves time. All right, and then over here is my H junction. Okay, so I got all these tiles, but I can't see them. Now, a good thing to do is a couple things, and here I'm going to ask you guys what to do. What do you recommend? Do you think I should bring these in as separate blend files? Think about this, or OBJs, because all they are is just separate objects, right? And I want to texture these things. I want to add textures to all of them. Or do you recommend first that I texture them and then bring them up, separate them into separate blend files? Because they got to be separate. I mean, I could bring them in, but if I bring this into Unity, I've got 5 layers, right? I can select all that stuff. It'll come into Unity. And let's just save this file. So save it. So save over. Here's my tile set. If I was to bring my tile set into Unity as is, just before anything else, let's make a Unity project like I promised I would. Then we'll do some texturing finally. So let's go into new. We'll go into GAME2015, W2018, and that's lesson 9. 3D scene. Just so we have something to drag into. And I want to show you what happens when you drag this in. This is without any kind of texture. Now the texturing I'm going to do is like going to be 2 seconds because I want to show you how to, but I'm not going to actually do it. It's too long. Texturing can take hours, guys. Hours and hours and hours. But if you have an artist on your team that wants to do it, or if you want to know how it's done, I'm going to show you a little bit of how it's done. And there's some really cool tools you can use as well, like Photoshop. That's pretty much the de facto tool for this. If I go into folder, I want to make a new scripts folder. And I want to make a new folder called scenes. I'll make a new folder called prefabs. And I also want to make a new folder called models, which is where I'm going to bring in my Blender stuff. Maybe I'll have textures as well. Okay, right now I don't have a scene. I'm going to save my scene as in my scenes folder. I'm going to save it as main. Go. Now I want to bring Blender in, so I'm going to go into my models folder and I'm going to go assets, import new asset, and I'm going to look at my desktop. Right, here's my desktop. And in my desktop, I'm going to look for that blend file, which I call tileset blend, and to show you what it looks like when it comes in. Right, so this is what you get. I have different layers. I'm taking the entire blend file, and I have all this. All right, so example, now what I can do is I can bring in an H junction, right? And this is what it would look like in Unity, right? So here's my H junction. Wow, does that look like an H junction to you? It kind of looks not like an H junction at all. And let me show you why it doesn't look like that. I got a bunch of stuff happening. I've got like a left turn. I've got a right turn. I got all kinds of stuff going on. Right? Because the tile set itself is the whole tile set, right? It's not separate. I'd have to reduce all this. So let's say, for example, I want to just bring in my H. I can just remove that. I want to continue. I want to make my H here, my T junction, my straight, my right turn, my left turn, my intersection, and get rid of my tile set altogether by deleting it. And now what I can do is I can move my stuff around by moving it over. There's my H, and there is my left turn, and this is my straight, and this is this part. You can see that I've got all the tiles that I want, but they're all, I had to separate them manually. So if I did this, it's a lot of work. And then what I can do is I can, let's say if I don't want my H is kind of a weird thing, so let's just get rid of it. But what about this part? This part makes more sense, right? So I need some straights, so let's just move this aside for a second, and this one in my level editor here. And what I want to do is put my straight, and I want it to connect into this area here. So just like I did last time, what I'd have to do is I'd have to move this in place roughly into where it's supposed to be, and then use vertex snapping mode. Right, so kind of snap those two vertices together. Okay, so that's one way to do it. And again, it's not going to be perfect because you can see that maybe I missed at times. I can miss my vertex. And you can see through it because the character is supposed to be in there, right? So that's where my vertex is supposed to be. I'm making my tiles, and I can extend this. I can kind of, duplicate it. So here's my straight. I can kind of duplicate that and move it over, and then I can use vertex snapping to snap them both in place, and I can keep doing that, make as long of a tunnel as I want. So again, duplicate, okay, make a bunch of them, so make some over here, and just gonna duplicate these ones really quickly. So again, use vertex snapping, so make a big straight tunnel. Vertex snapping. Right, and then this one, and then this one. Right, so you see I have a longer tunnel now, so I'm making my level. right, with my long tunnel. And I want to make a right turn. So let's get my right turn here. And let's move it over and move it where it's supposed to be approximately. And just snap to. Now this is interesting. It says right turn, but actually it's going left. And I bet you my left turn is also turned around. And I bet you it's because of my my rotation is all messed up. But the great thing is I can always rotate this across. Let's try that again. I can rotate it across the this axis right here, right? So I don't want the whole thing. Now it's rotating across both. Now Y is up. Notice that it's rotating across both ways. Let's try this again. Again, it looks like just because the orientation is messed up, you can see that it's rotating here on the axis to 100 and would that be about 180 degrees. Let's do that. So if I went to 180 degrees, went to 0, that's what it would look like. And so I do want to go 90. No, that's about right, 180. Rotated. Did it rotate everything? No. Okay, so then what I want to do is I want to move this over and do that same snapping stuff. So, you know, I want to do one of these and bring it down and across in Unity, and then press vertex, V for vertex snapping, snap those two together. And then I can grab that straight. There's a straight. I can duplicate it. So Control D to duplicate. And I can bring that where I want it. So over here, rotate it kind of across the y-axis, I guess. So across the y-axis there, although it's not rotating across the y. Let's say I'm going to take it to negative 90. And then move that over. It's because it's really misaligned here. That's okay. So press V for vertex snapping, and then I can continue doing that. Control D, that over, vertex snap that one. You can see that I can make kind of a longer area, and then I can continue with that kind of thing. So rotate, make this rotate here, across this way. This is a right turn, and I want to make a left turn. Yeah, it's all messed up anyway, so I'm just going to put it in place. But really, these are just tiles for now that I can use. And I have both right and left turn. It's just a turn. I should probably just need one. There we go. All right, so there we go. So I have this thing here, and just to test this out to see how it works, you can see that I have all of these, but none of them have any colliders, so I can kind of select all of them. So let's select all these. These are all selected now, and I can add a new physics collider. We'll make it so it's a mesh collider. Again, I could have done this a lot differently. That's a mesh collider, and it doesn't have to be convex, but it does have to be a mesh collider. There we go. And just from a rigid body perspective, let's add a rigid body. So we'll add a rigid body. There we go. So all of them have a rigid body now. I'm not going to use gravity with these ones though, right? So that is kind of everything you need. If I run this thing, it'll be, depending on where my camera is, that's where what I'm going to see. It's going to be seen kind of in here. But what I want to see is, I want to see a character. So I'm going to kind of do I'm going to add some assets, totally running away from me when it comes to what I'm doing here. So here's my character assets. And what I'm going to do here is import them all. but I want to bring him into being so I can just test this level out just to see how it looks with just the tile set that I've created with no textures. Yeah, I might as well make this convex. Well, let's see how that looks. So if I take away my camera, let's get rid of it, and let's bring in a character model. So we're going to go into characters, first person character. We're going to get a regular FPS controller for this example and bring him in, and bring him into the scene somewhere in the middle here. So into the scene. But we just flash into him so we can see him. There he is, kind of in the scene there. And then if we play, hopefully he won't fall through the world. Yay, he fell through the world. Yeah, so these straight pieces, do I have to make them concave? I think I do. Or convex, I mean. Let's try this again. So T-junction. So I'm not using gravity here, and it's not kinematic. And what is this again? What's the trick? If I do this, and if I press, I think it's going to fall through. If it was inside of there, it's going to just kill me. Kill me now. I guess hindsight, what I could have done is make the collider ahead of time. And the way to do that is inside of your models, which is this tile set for these models. I have control when I bring them in for the model itself. I could adjust them and say something like, I want my colliders, generate colliders. That's what I could have done, right? And I could also I want to generate light maps like I've done before, and then I can apply those changes. Now, unfortunately, it does it for these, but it doesn't do it for these because these are ones I made. But if you look at these ones, what they've done is created a mesh collider without a rigid body. And yeah. So I wonder if I just take the rigid body away, if that would just be okay. So if I just said no rigid body. Let's try that. That's pretty cool. But I'm on top, right? Not because I'm using a convex collider. And I don't want to use convex. I want to use the regular mesh collider. And there I am. Okay, so here I am. So here I'm inside the model. You can see that I'm kind of going in there, and you can see there's a bit of problems. Take a look at the light that's happening here. So I'm chugging along, and I see these weird cuts in the ceiling and stuff. And where is this from, guys? This is my level, right? I've just made this interior level, and I've got this weird light happening. Light is penetrating inside this entire model, which is kind of weird that it did that because it shouldn't. Of course not. Well, yeah, it's shadow. So where's that shadow coming from, right? It's messed up for a couple reasons, and I want to talk about this so you guys understand, right? So the ceiling is the ceiling, right? But the ceiling looks like I can kind of look through it. And if I jump up, like if I jump, I can't do really anything there. Let's see if I can jump onto this little platform. And see how so see that little part on the left where I'm actually going through the wall? Let's see that here. And there's an area that's kind of right in this corner here. And if I go to here at the top, so I've just run through, and if I look at the top, this top looks a little bit weird. A little bit weird, right? There, I'm on the actual top. See, I can actually look through. I can't jump through, but I can actually look through the model, right? And this is because the normal is flipped. So to fix that, I have to do it all in Blender. So you can see like bringing it in like this wasn't a good idea. That's what I was going to try and prove here. So going back to Blender, again, you can see that I can look through the model, no problem. One thing with all these models is you have to remove doubles, right? So again, I want to select all and go to so when I'm in edit mode, right, I want to remove doubles, right? Removing doubles is important, like 14 vertices removed, because it kind of joins the models all together. And I want to do that for, yeah, they're on top. The vertices are literally on top of each other. They have to be almost exactly in the same position, right? That's part of it. Again, I'm using backface culling for this, and I didn't export it. I just like kind of dragged it out, right? The other thing is that these shapes, the way they're receiving light is kind of weird too. Like if I bring the light back, let's bring that light back in Blender. So give us an idea of what's happening here. So let's bring the light back, the lamp, and I want to kind of hit the lamp for a second, right? So let's find that lamp, and let's press Alt H to show everything. I want to show the lamp. There's my object, and oh yeah, it's not. I'm not in the right scene. Let's add a lamp. So Shift A will add another lamp in here. Right here's a lamp, a point lamp, and we'll bring this up. So there's our point lights, and then we'll render this thing so you can see what the scene looks like. Here's our material, and this is what you can see. Now it's funny, but I got my roof. And yet I can see my model, right? Even though there's a roof on here. Well, my roof is something that I can see, right? On the top, I can see the model. And if I bring this in to the model itself and drag it across, then now I can see reflections on the roof. So the actual model is made correctly, but I've got this backface culling that messes us up. If I don't backface cull, then you're going to see that it looks like this. The model looks right, actually. All right? So backface culling is good for us to use, but when we bring it in, depending on how it's brought in from here to Unity, it can mess you up. So that's just an idea of what the light looks like here. Let's do the rest. So I want to kind of go into the rest of them really quickly. So this one, you can see that you've got this model here. I'm going to just select all. I'm going to go into edit mode and remove doubles. So I removed seven vertices here. And I'm just going to go into the other ones too, each of the other layers. So I'm going to go into this one, like that one. And now there shouldn't be any vertices that I should be able to remove here, but just in case I want to do it. And I want to go into the next one, just to make sure that there's nothing that I need to get rid of. I remove two there. And go into that one, and then remove doubles from there. I've already done this one, but let's just do it again. So going to this one and remove doubles from here, nothing. And I've done the other one. Okay, so all the doubles are removed. This is a good sign. And I've got everything, and I want to texture some stuff. I want to start texturing. Now, texturing, guys, I'm using the exact same material. This is the key here. Okay, so notice that my material is material. It's called material, right? So anything I do on this material is the exact same everywhere, right? If I want to add additional materials for the floor and for everything else, I'd have to add additional materials. So let's say I want to make everything one texture, okay? So here I have a material. We're just going to call this the tile material, my tile material. I also want to make this default material non-specular, so it's going to be more like a floor type. And if I add in a texture, right, notice that right now it's pretty dark. Let me just move into solid mode for a second so we can see everything. And the reason why we're seeing this part is because of backface culling. Otherwise, you'll see this. So I can kind of look into it because it only calls the faces that my camera cannot see. Only, or when I'm inside this object, these faces here are the roof or the ceiling of this tunnel, right? All right, so this is good, but I want to do some texturing. How do I set up a texture? What does that look like? So if you click this little button here, it shows you that there is texture paint mode. Texture paint mode immediately shows us that we have a white texture like this, right? Again, I'm looking at the rightmost layer here, and it gives me a little paintbrush. Here's this little paintbrush here. But if I do anything right now, it doesn't do anything because there's no paint slot. So I need to add a paint slot. So I'm going to click and add paint slot, and I'm going to add a diffuse color paint slot. It's asking me what the resolution I want, and you can, typically I want to make at least a 4K or 2048 by 2048 resolution. Let's try that. So 2048, and by width and 2048 by height. Gives me enough resolution so it'll kind of be good for most games. And then press OK. Now you can see that the texture is black. But this is okay because what I can do now is if I switch modes, so I want to go to compositing. Actually, it's not the mode I want to go into. Not video editing. Which one is it again? UV editing? Yeah, UV editing. So if I go to UV editing mode, this is what I want to do, right? You can see that I've got this texture here, but there's no, I haven't separated the UVs. So if I go back into edit mode and select all, I want to unwrap this model. Remember we did unwrapping last time? Now this is a difficult model to unwrap. What can possibly happen here? Well, we've got the inside of the model that's going to try and somehow magically unwrap itself, right? So a couple things tricks to use. If I only want to do the floor, again, I can hide the rest of it. So again, I can look at it from the front, go into orthographic view, deselect all, right? As an example. So I only want the floor to be selected, but I want the rest to be hidden. Make it so it's wireframe mode. Select all my faces that I want to hide, right? So these are all the faces that I want to hide. Actually, let's just do that again. Yeah, we can do that. We just press H for hide. And now you see the floor is the only thing that's available to us. So if I look at the top, I can see the floor, and this part is going to be unwrapped. If I press select all now and unwrap, I can say just unwrap normally. And you can see that the floor is literally unwrapped here. And this is what I want to paint on. Going back into texture paint mode, I already have a texture slot, right? Here's my paint, right? And so if I only want to do the floor, and again, I want to go into at least see my texture. Here's my texture. There's two places I can paint. I can paint here, so I can choose a color. Let's say I want to choose green. And I want to also change from view to paint on this side. So you can see I have a little brush. And now when I paint here, it will appear here. And to show you this, the reason why we can't see it is because we are in texture mode and I have no lights in the scene. So for me to see this, let me go back into edit mode, right? And let me go back into object mode for a second. And I want to add a light to the scene. So we're going to say Shift A, add a new lamp. So point lamp, and bring this into the object. See how that's been painted there? I don't know if you guys can see that, but I brought a lamp in there because you can't see it unless you have light. Now, what you could do for now, if you wanted to, let's just go back to from UV editing mode to default view, is you could make this material, because this is the material that we've got here, we could make this material shadeless for now, which would make it so that it can be unlit. Okay, so we don't need light. It'll just show us. And if I go back into UV editing mode now, and I go into texture paint mode, you can see that when I go in there, I can see that this is what I've painted. So I'm in paint mode. So if I keep painting here, you can see that wherever I'm painting affects my floor, right, which is kind of neat. If I go into edit mode, so going back into edit mode, I see this part, right? Paint mode doesn't really work here because I can't paint when this is in edit mode, right? If I go back into texture paint mode, right, here's texture paint mode, and I can still do some kind of painting, like I can actually paint on the model as well. So I can go on the model and I can physically paint on the model. Now painting on the outside won't work because painting on the outside it's culled unless I undo. I can also change the size of my brushes. You see that on the left here, the size of my brush is whatever I want it. So I can literally paint this way. This is kind of a straight way of painting. I want to make this green. I just picked a green color, but it's layering on top. And what it does is it shows you where in the model I can paint. So if I wanted to change my brush size, I can change my radius of my brush to make it a lot bigger. And you can see that I can layer my paint in there. Now, this is not what I want. This mixes. I can also just go add. And add actually overlays on top of everything else, right? So kind of adds everything in, right? Kind of adds it. I can also delete, like erase, right? So I can color burn and I can subtract. So I can just kind of subtract everything that's there. So I can kind of delete what I'm painting. And it's not going to delete my model, just the stuff that's being painted on the layer. And so what I'm actually doing here, just to let you guys know, is I've got this UV map, which is going to be an object I can bring into Photoshop, a texture. That's what it is. So again, I mean, to start off, this isn't very efficient. What I'd rather do is paint some base amount of color in here, right? To start off. So right now I have subtract, I have add. There's other options here, right? You can see that I can do things like lighten, erase, all the different things I have in Photoshop. I can kind of do here, and I can also change my brush. So let's go back to add for a second, and I can also change my brush size. So my brush type. My brush right now is this one. I can do a fill brush. So here's my fill brush, and when I do that, I can kind of fill it to have a default fill style. Right? It's my default fill style. You can see that I still have some areas that I have to fix up because of my little painting party that I had. So that's the fill brush. I can also smear and soften and everything else. I can change my blend mode when I fill. So let's undo that. So undo. And now instead of my fill brush, if I click once, I just fill it up with my my mode. Undo. So that's the fill brush. There's a lot of other brushes. You can also make your own brushes and download your own brushes. Let's just go back to, so you can see that there's texture draw, and I can just texture paint there like I did last time, or I can pick a really more realistic color. So kind of going to there and make this more of a gray scale. Just kind of a gray color. I can make my brush bigger. Like I have my texture that I have here. I have my texture mask. I also have a different kind of stroke. Like right now I'm using a space stroke. I can use an airbrush stroke, or I can use a line. And this is very interesting. So I can use a line. So I can draw a line from here to there and then draw, and it'll draw a perfect line. And sometimes this is quite preferable to just randomly drawing by hand, right? There's lines, there's drags and draws, there's dots, there's lines, there's curves. And instead of adding, I can also do a, instead of adding stuff, I can go like a hard light or light burn, just color. So I'm not adding at all, right? These are all different blend types. There's also something called accumulate that I can use. So I'm going to go back to add and go to accumulate here, which makes it very bright. the more times I add stuff to it, it'll increase the brightness until I've got the layering that I want. So I could do this thing here. This is all in Blender, by the way. And Blender's a pretty cool tool for that. And the reason why this is so bright is because I've made this material shadeless. So here I can do the same thing over here. So kind of make this intersection the color that I want, and it's going to eventually come to that right color that I want, right? So I can just keep doing this. So I'm adding I'm kind of base coding. If you ever did any kind of 3D modeling, like in the real world, like by using Warhammer or something, I'm kind of creating a base coat for my model because I want it to start off fairly. Let's do one of these. There we go, and one of those. So fairly good. And if I look in there, I can see that my floor now is colored the way I want it, right? And I can add some details in here, right? As I zoom in, I can add in details. I can add a tile for my floor, like these little segments can be tiles. So again, I can change my brush size, make it a lot smaller, change the, take accumulate off, and then darken it even more. And then I can add in, instead of this, I can actually keep my line, and I can add a line of darkness. So I want to kind of burn this area here, color burn. So right now this is add. I want to darken. You can also do a color burn. Color burn would be a different color. There we go. Color that in. There's just darken that. And I can also remove. Probably erase might be good too, or subtract. So subtract, a lot of color there already. We got like full color. So I can kind of subtract color and do that. The tiles. So I want to kind of do that tile. And I want to do a tile that goes here. And maybe just a tile set that goes like this. So big tiles, big tiles. These tiles here. And again, I'm very bad here, but try that again. You can see that when I start adding details, it kind of adds details to the model. This is one way to do it. So actually physically paints along the texture lines. And then what we can do is we can export this texture as a model, and you can see that it actually does whatever I draw there, like physically, whether it's bad or good, it just paints it right on the model itself, physically. That's one thing. The other way to do it is to physically paint on the model. So you can actually see the model a little bit clearer here. You can also change the strength of the painting. So one line is radius of the brush, and the other one is the strength of the painting. So if I wanted to add something like a different color, more of a brownish color, and I wanted to make, instead of a line, I wanted to do something like airbrush, I could choose to, kind of add some noise to kind of create an area that for the tile to be a little bit darker or lighter, and then it appears here in the model. So again, I can kind of do that for some of this area and create like this natural shadow area here physically on the model, right? So I kind of turn around, do the same thing over here. Right, so you can see that you have direct effects right on the model itself, right? And from this, you can go back into Photoshop. I can actually save this as a Photoshop file, go there, modify it, and import it. But what happens to the other stuff? Because remember, I have one big Blender file. Well, if you look at these ones, none of them have been unwrapped. And so there is no file for these right now, right? This file here is just for this model. And if I want to look at it in default mode, let's go to default mode, I can see that I have a model here and the material. And if I go off of texture paint, let's go off texture paint to edit mode. You can see there's edit mode. And if I want to see the model, the texture, I can show you the texture. So here's the texture that I've painted in edit mode. Deselect all. This is what it looks like. Right? And in the texture, I have this thing called text and this other one called the diffuse color. So I want to get rid of this one, so I can delete this one. I have this diffuse color. I want to push it up. This is the main color texture I got here. It's already unwrapped, and I can save this thing with the model. When I bring it in, it'll come in just like this. Now, it's pretty boring. It's kind of a white texture because I've colored it so deeply. But again, going back into texture paint mode, here's texture paint mode. So I go into texture paint. I got these walls back, but literally what I can do here is I can paint on the model, right? So, do one of these things. And, it's not good until it's good. It's not looking very good right now because of what I've done. I can change my brush. So go back to my stroke, go back to space, for example. Your space means like a regular brush. So I can kind of draw this way. And I can kind of, create more of a regular texture where I accumulate these tiles around the corner here. And I'm physically painting on the model where I'm darkening the model, adding this blue kind of texture here, and I can add, the effect I want until it's right. And again, maybe I want to add it maybe a little bit darker and maybe some dark tones in here. So create this area that's kind of blue. Now I'm getting this weird thing because I'm painting through the model and I'm not looking at the model, right? But you can see that as I paint, I can also smear. Smear is a great brush to use too. Like I'm actually painting, but you can actually do smearing where you can kind of drag. Now it's a very expensive operation to do here because what you're actually doing is you're moving some of the pixels around. So smearing is good because it takes away some of the errors, like some of these dark lines here. I can smear them up so they look more irregular as I start painting up this area here. And then I can add in some darker lines. Let's go to draw again. Make it really much darker. And again, what I want to do is just add areas where I'm going to start creating my tile and darken it until it's the right look for me. This looks pretty messy, but you have to see the outcome. It actually can look really, really good. You just have to be really, really patient with it as you continue to layer more and more of your color in this area until it becomes right. Again, I'm using Blender. You can also use Photoshop. There's another great tool. It's not free. It's been introduced to me lately called 3D Coat. 3D Coat's a really cool thing that we've seen as well lately. It's a massive tile here. And again, if you want to get rid of stuff, you can also subtract. That's what I'm doing right now. I can also go color burn or linear burn, where I can kind of darken this area here until I have the right look. Just adding that in there. And I'm doing this with my mouse. This is really bad. Usually I use a stylus for this. But you can actually go in here and do this. So now if you took this into Photoshop to fix, you can also do that too. Like I got this thing here. Let's go take this into as a texture for a second, then we'll stop for the day. So here's the actual value, the image. I can say image, as an example, save as image. I can save as a PNG called this tile diffuse color. I'll save it in my desktop. And what I can do is I can take it into my favorite paint program, whatever that is. Here's Fireworks as an example, and fix it and load it back in. So here's my tile. What I get is immediately is the shape of my tile. So let's say, for example, I want to fix it because I've messed it up. I can kind of select the area that I want to fix. And I don't want it to be blue. I want it to be somewhat gray. Make it kind of a solid gray. So now this is where I can do a lot of my work. I can kind of put gray in there. I can fix that. And then I can add whatever lines I want. Like I can actually do much better painting here or in Illustrator. And if I was to save this, I'm not going to do too much more work just to show you. I've saved it. If I go back to Blender and if I go image, right? And if I go reload image, you can see now that I've got my image reloaded and it's whatever I wanted in Photoshop. So I can work in Photoshop, bring it back in here, clean it up, or I can paint it again and bring it back into Photoshop or my favorite editor, right? All right, any questions around some basic, I want just to introduce you to how to do texture painting and create our tile. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this tile, because I wanna use the next example, I wanna build a level with this tile, as opposed to the tiles we used before, next week when we get together, all right? So I'm gonna save the blend file, and I'm also gonna pack up the tile with it. And again, we did this last time really quickly. So in here, I can click this little pack button, which packs the tile along with my object. Save that. And what I'm going to do is bring this into Slack for you guys if you're interested in having it. So here's my tile sets. We'll go into here, and we'll bring my Pokey tile set here. It's not great, but I mean, it's a good start. Lots of work to be done into Slack, or wherever my tile set seems to be. It's right over here. All right, and let's just do that. Okay, cool. That's it for me today. I'm going to try and quickly go around and look at your stuff, and then I will see you guys next week.